But disabled veterans get a hearing decision in less than half that time, about 8 to 10 months. And that is still not acceptable and needs to be improved, however. However, veterans also are not immune from the consequences of continued inadequate funding provided by SSA to operate the Social Security system. Since 2010, the number of beneficiaries for Social Security has grown by 14% as the baby boomers reach retirement age. As many as 10,000 baby boomers a day now become eligible for Social Security. And at the same time, Social Security's operating budget has fallen by 11% after accounting for inflation. This has made it difficult, even impossible, for Social Security to serve our constituents promptly when they need help the most. Veterans report difficulty reaching SSA on its 800 number when they have questions or problems. If they try to visit a field office in person, they wait for service, can be several hours. And even though they are moved to the head of the line if they need a hearing before the administrative law judge, their benefits can be held up waiting for a decision to be written or receive their checks. We need to do better by our veterans and by all Americans so that they can receive the benefits they deserve and what they have earned. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you again for holding this hearing, and as a veteran yourself, understanding that with less than 1% of the entire nation who serves in our military, and in fact our Peace Corps, our VISTA, Teach America et al., it's long overdue, especially for those Americans who put their lives on the line every day, that we provide them with the kind of services that they do for us on a daily basis. And I commend you for holding this hearing and yield back.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your comments. And as is customary, any member is welcome to submit a statement for the hearing. Before we move on to our testimony today, I want to remind our witness to please limit your oral statements to 5 minutes if you can. However, without objection, all of the written testimony will be made a part of the hearing. We have one witness today. Seated at the table is Gina Clemmons, Associate Commissioner, Office of Disability Policy with the Social Security Administration. Ms. Clemmons, welcome and thanks for being here today. We appreciate you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Chairman Johnson, Ranking Member Larson, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to speak about our efforts to support our nation's service members and veterans. I am Gina Clemmons, Associate Commissioner in the Office of Disability Policy at the Social Security Administration. I start by thanking you, Chairman Johnson, for your 29 years of dedicated service to the United States Air Force. I also thank all of the members of this subcommittee for your service to our nation and for your ongoing support of our service members and veterans. Social Security protects all Americans, and we are proud of the help we provide to men and women who served and are serving our country. As an Army veteran myself, I appreciate the opportunity to highlight our targeted outreach initiatives, expedited processes, recruitment efforts, and collaborations with the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Department of Defense. To reach veterans, we employ a variety of outreach measures through our over 1,200 field offices. In this effort, our frontline employees are assisted by our regional public affairs specialists. In fiscal year 2017 alone, our public affairs specialists participated in more than 260 targeted outreach events with a total estimated audience of 70,000 people. As an example of the success of these relationships, military transition programs include information on our programs, and SSA assists service members in completing disability applications at military hospitals. Going through the Walter Reed Medical Center for my own military discharge, I know how daunting the process is. Having also had the privilege to see it from the other side where I was able to take disability applications, I still recall the visible relief of service members and family members, many embracing you because it was just one last thing they had to think about. In addition to outreach, we have a targeted website at ssa.gov where service members, veterans, and their families can find information about our programs, application process, and answers to common questions. Providing quality and timely services is at the core of what we do for our service members and veterans. At SSA, we provide disability benefits to people who cannot work because of their medical condition. VA considers a veteran's ability to work only in limited circumstances. VA primarily bases disability compensation on the severity of the veteran's impairments from injuries or diseases incurred or made worse while on active duty. Different definitions require separate decisions, but we work together to strengthen both programs. For example, through collaboration, we expedite our decisions at all levels of review for wounded warriors and veterans who have 100% permanent and total VA rating. Since partnering with DoD in 2005 and VA in 2014, we have expedited over 200,000 claims for these wounded warriors and veterans. In response to interest from this committee and the Armed Service Committee, we collaborated with DoD and VA to electronically exchange thousands of medical records. Through this process, we have reduced the time it takes to receive medical record and improved the quality of our medical record extract. In addition to our services, we are proud of the success in recruiting and supporting veterans. We know military service helps to develop strong character and results-driven attitude. These attributes make veterans a perfect fit for our agency. Quite simply, hiring veterans is smart practice, and that's what we do. Last fiscal year, we participated in over 200 recruitment fairs, 100 of which were at a military base or sponsored veterans organization. At these fairs, we assembled a database of highly skilled veterans' resumes, helping us to hire 769 veterans, including 469 new colleagues with a disability like myself. But it is not just about hiring veterans, it's also about supporting them. For example, we created training material for our managers on military culture. We collaborated with our Veterans and Military Affairs Advisory Council to refresh our Veterans Employee website, which includes information on agency policies, programs, and career resources. In short, we are committed to providing high-quality service in all aspects of our program administration and to supporting our veteran employees and their families. Chairman Johnson, Ranking Member Larson, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for your opportunity to describe the ways we support the men and women who have put on a uniform to serve our nation with distinction. I extend a heartfelt thank you to all the service members and veterans in attendance today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. We'll turn to questions if that's okay. As is customary for each round of questions, I will limit my time to 5 minutes and will ask my colleagues to also limit their questioning time to 5 minutes as well. Ms. Clemmons, as a 29-year veteran, I have long been committed to ensuring that our country does right by our veterans. And when it comes to our disabled veterans, it's my understanding that Social Security is processing initial claims for disabled veterans 5 to 7 days faster than for the general public. While the Social Security Administration says it is expediting these cases, that doesn't seem like it's really that much faster. Can you tell us more about how you're trying to expedite claims?
Chairman Johnson, thank you for the opportunity to describe our process. A veterans and service members' claims are often quite complex, with multiple chronic conditions at times and extensive medical records. It's not surprising that we see a veteran's claim with over 1,000 pieces of records in it. Despite this, we are able to expedite their claims by putting in a process at all levels of review and in each step in our program. For example, when a veteran calls, rather than waiting the standard goal of 28 days to set an appointment, as noted, we set an appointment in 3 days. When the field office transfers that claim to the disability determination services, they immediately start working the claim rather than putting it in a queue for assignment that could take a week. That similar happens when we have the medical consultants and the psychological consultants review the case. Rather than waiting in a queue, as soon as they're ready for review, they get reviewed. So at each step, we are looking for ways to increase the process, and this happens at all of our levels of the program, including at the appeals level, where we're able to cut the processing time in half because there's more pending claims at that level.
You know, one thing that seems to really make a difference is electronic health records, which can cut processing time nearly in half. And I know you work with the VA and DOD on this already. Are there any other ways to get more electronic health records for veterans?
Chairman Johnson, thank you for our support of our health IT activities. As more veterans are receiving care outside of the VA facility, we also need to ensure that we are getting those records as expeditiously as possible. Under our IT modernization efforts, we have part of that strategy includes acquiring electronic evidence from all records in an electronic format. So the more electronic records that we receive from all facilities, it'll help the veterans as well as all the individuals we serve.
Okay, one thing I hear a lot from our wounded warriors is that they want to work, yet they, in reality, some of the policies that are supposed to help actually make things harder. You know, the Ticket to Work and Work Incentives Improvement Act of 1999 tried to help individuals with disabilities who return to work by extending their Medicare eligibility for several years. Can you tell us what typically happens to a person returning to work who has other insurance available to them, such as through their employer, and as a result no longer want to be on Medicare? And do they have to stay on Medicare, or do they have a choice? And how is this different for our wounded warriors?
Chairman Johnson, somebody who has other insurance through their employer has the option, often has the option to be on Medicare or not. This is different for our veterans and military service, former military service members, as they are required, if they're eligible for Medicare Part B, they are required to enroll in Medicare Part B to be able to get and receive TRICARE.
And you all follow them, I presume.
We do, yes, we absolutely do.
Thank you for that, Ms. Clemmons. And colleagues, as you've heard, there's a quick quirk in the law that means these veterans aren't treated the same as everyone else. Some of these veterans may want to keep their Medicare Part B and some may not. But here's the problem. These veterans who want to keep access to TRICARE for life have no choice but to stay on Medicare, which is more expensive than TRICARE. And I'm not sure that's right. In other words, the interaction between Social Security's disability program and TRICARE program inadvertently penalizes those wounded warriors who return to work after recovering from their injuries. That's why I've introduced bipartisan legislation, H.R. 2243, the HEARTS Act, and the Health Equity and Access for Returning Troops and Service Members Act. This bill would repeal the requirement that wounded warriors maintain and pay for Medicare coverage upon returning to work in order to keep access to TRICARE. It's the right thing to do, I think. I'll now recognize my colleague, Mr. Larson, for any questions you might have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mrs. Clemmons, for your testimony. I have a couple of rudimentary questions. Number one, how many veterans currently receive Social Security benefits?
Our last estimate is 1 million veterans. We can confirm for the record that that's the current number, but 1 million.
And what type of Social Security benefits is it that veterans and their families depend on?
Veterans can receive all of the benefits of our program, whether it's for
Do veterans pay into the Social Security system through their military service?
They do indeed.
How does Social Security disability benefits differ from VA disability compensation?
So Social Security benefits are in part an income replacement for your inability to work. Veterans benefits are a compensation for a loss incurred or made worse in the service. So that plays out because there's different definitions in a couple of ways. For example, we only pay full benefits, where, total benefits, where VA can pay compensation for a number of impairments. They can add up to reach 100, but they're partial disability based on the severity of the conditions. We look at work. We're looking at all jobs on the national economy to see if a person can do that. In the limited circumstances, and it's limited, that VA looks at work, they're really looking at, can the person do their prior work in their community? So big distinctions on that. And VA is also looking at how the person presents. For example, if somebody has high blood pressure and depression, but they are service-connected, they will get compensation for that, regardless if they get treatment or not. In our program, we would look at those impairments, but if they are treated and controlled, then they wouldn't necessarily hinder their ability to work. So
But a veteran can receive both Social Security and veterans benefits as well.
they absolutely do, and many do.
It's, I think it was Ronald Reagan that said, facts don't lie, and, and they're a difficult thing. But with 10,000 baby boomers a day becoming eligible for Social Security, and with the number of beneficiaries having grown by 14% as the baby boomers come through retirement, Social Security's budget has fallen during the same time by 11%. Do you think you could be providing better service? I think Mr. Johnson rightly points out some of the inadequacies that exist, and one would think, based on the numbers coming through the system and the cuts in the budget, and with use of modern technology, that we ought to be able to do a better job.
So Ranking Member Larson, with the President's budget, we will continue to hold fast in our commitment to veterans and military service members.
Yeah, but that doesn't answer my question.
We will also be able to work our priority workloads, such as implementing our CARES plan to bring down the pending backlog.
So basically, you're saying this is fine, you can do without any increase, and this 10,000 baby boomers a day has no impact on Social Security. You're going to continue to operate as efficiently as possible.
We are going to continue to look for efficiencies in our program and become more efficient where we can through our IT modernization.
So you need no more increase, you're fine with the budget as it is?
With the President's budget, we can address our priority workloads, pending bringing down the pending.
So we just went through this whole thing where we're talking about people who aren't in the military and the exhaustive time that they have to wait to get a disability claim, and you're fine with that?
Ranking Member Larson, with the President's budget, we'll be able to address our workloads.
So that's a non-answer answer, but, frankly, it's very disturbing when you see the premier government agency that has responsibility to deal with its American citizens and say that with respect to waiting for disability claims, both veterans and non-veterans, that is an absurd amount of time given the technology that we have, and you insist that, well, that we can do just fine with what we have. Is that right?
But with $100 million extra, for every $100 million extra that we receive, we can work an additional 106,000 disability claims and 51,000 hearings.
So will you be able to come back to this committee next year and say, given the cuts that we received in the budget and given our ability to deal with this, that we will see drastic improvement both for our veterans and for our citizens who deserve disability and service and efficiency out of their government?
I will tell you that we will continue to operate with
That's a
budget
non-answer.
committee.
Will you commit to that? Because we'd like to have things measured by standards. I think everybody on this committee especially wants to see that if, we've got a large population out there that we have to serve. We have enormous stress on that system with 10,000 baby boomers coming in there a day. And so it's helpful to people who are legislators to know whether or not you're adequately funding. You're saying you are, and you can deal with all of these. So I'm saying, good, we'll expect a report from you next year showing how you've decreased that time in which people get their disability payments in both the military side as well as as well as your average citizen.
Ranking Member Larson, I can tell you that as an agency, we will continue to use our resources as efficiently and as effectively as we can. We will concentrate on our
Will
priority
that
work.
translate into getting these benefits out to people in a more timely basis?
We will continue to advance IT modernization, which will allow us to acquire electronic evidence. That
Wow.
will bring down the timeline for benefits.
All right, so we're not going to get any answers here, so that's unfortunate, given the position that you hold and given that every American relies on Social Security. Very disturbing, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you for your questions. You need to give us direct answers if you can, please. Mr. Rice, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Ms. Clemmons, for being here today. I see a couple of things here that are just curious to me. One is that your disability applications have decreased by almost 500,000 per year from 2012 to 2016. What's your current level of disability applications per year?
The number of disability applications is about 2.7 million per year.
So it was then, I'm just 3.2 in 2012?
It may have been at that time. I can confirm for the record.
2.7 million applications per year. And also that your number of days to review has increased since 2012 significantly. Why is that? Has the number of judges gone down, or what's causing the increase in the backlog?
Well, there are a number of considerations. As noted, we have a greater number of people coming through our process than we had before.
Yeah, but what I'm confused about, I don't mean to badger you, I'm sorry, but I just want to understand. So this says you have 500,000 less claims per year now than you did in 2012, but the number of days it takes to get a hearing has doubled in that same time period. What causes that? I mean, if the number of claims have gone down by 20%, seems like the number of days, unless you had a huge backlog to begin with, are you losing judges? Or are you losing experienced people? Or what's causing the problem?
Well, Congressman Rice, what I can tell you is that it takes us some time to work through the cases that we had. So the 2012 cases, as they're, we have to continue to work our cases. There are a number of other variables. Since that's not my area specifically, I can submit those areas for the record on what other additive factors addresses that.
I know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the primary objective, the basic function of this process is to, you want people to get disability that they're entitled to, but you got to make sure they're entitled to it, right? So you've got to go back and review their medical records and make sure that they are in fact disabled and that in fact keeps them from working, correct? Isn't that the primary function of what you're doing here?
It is indeed.
Yeah. And so I know I used to actually rent, I've had commercial real estate. I used to rent an office to you guys, and I saw technology improving through that time. They used to have a number of judges come through this office and have hearings, and they switched to tele-hearings where the judges never came. They just were on a TV screen in the office and allowed judges to have more hearings. What other types of technological advancements have you had to increase your efficiency and decrease these waiting times?
Congressman Rice, thank you for acknowledging the improvements we've made in our videos to work on our pending claims. Other areas where we're working, we've spoken about health IT. We continue to increase the amount of information we get through the electronic record. But in addition to speeding the amount of time, we are actually building in decision support in those capabilities. So when we receive the record, it's just not a record. It has enhancements to it where it will actually flag for our adjudicators that it may meet one of our medical listings. We are continuing to build out that functionality using the machine learning, natural language processing, optical character recognition to ensure that it is accurate decisions that we're making expeditiously and efficiently using technology.
Have like a triage function where when somebody comes in and they're, very obviously totally disabled, that you can just kick them out immediately and not put them through this 2 years of waiting for a disability hearing?
Absolutely. Our sequential evaluation, the fundamental process that we use to evaluate claims, looks at medical first. If you can meet the criteria on medical, there's no other longer assessment needed. That's our medical listings of impairment. That will absolutely, most of the, like a larger percent of the people that meet those medical listings are held at the initial level. They never get to an appeals because it's a clear decision. We also have expedited processes for people that are TERI, who are terminal illness, or compassionate allowances for individuals that do meet those significant, are severest, so we can work them through the process.
So I'm just going to leave with this one question for you to follow up. If what this memo says that for this hearing is true, that the number of hearings, or the number of claims has dropped from 3.2 million in 2012 to 2.7 million in 2016, which is like a 20% drop, or maybe a little 15% drop. Why has the number of days to get to a hearing gone from 300 days to 600 days? And unless you've got 20% less judges, do you have 20% less judges?
I do not know the percentage of judges. It's not my area.
It's about what the fundamental underlying problem there is. Thank you, ma'am.
We'll go back to the record.
Thank you, Mr. Pasquale. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for holding this hearing. Dr. Clemmons, you come to this position very qualified, your experience. Your first responsibility and my first responsibility is to the country, not to any political party, not to any president. Ensuring that our veterans receive disability and retirement benefits, and that their families receive survivor benefits in a timely fashion is critical for the 20,000 veterans who receive Social Security Administration benefits in my district. As you testified, the Social Security Administration has successfully expedited disability claims with wounded warriors who have a benefit rating of 100% permanent and total. Now, we could do more, of course. More can be done to reduce claims processing time, you've heard, and ensure our veterans receive accurate decisions on their claims. And I'm looking at two charts. One chart is the cuts to Social Security funding and when they really began. And the other chart is the waiting times for disability benefit appeals. They coincide. In other words, when the cuts came, the time expanded. As more servicemen and women return home from the battlefield, I do not understand why this administration proposed eliminating the individual unemployability benefits program in its budget last year. AMVETS estimated this proposal would hurt 225,000 military veterans. It would decrease the disability benefit paid to an unmarried veteran with a 90% disabled rating by a full $1,200 a month. A veteran with 60% disability rating who lives alone was estimated to see a cut of $1,890.34, which is 63.6%. This is outrageous. This is unacceptable, especially since candidate Trump promised to improve the treatment of veterans and promised not to cut Social Security. The Social Security Administration budget has declined 11%, since 2011. There are unprecedented delays in appeals hearings, despite wait times being lower for veterans. And callers are hung up on or getting busy signals before connecting with an operator. There have been a closure of 64 field offices throughout the nation, and a disability hearings backlog with an average, as you've heard from several of us, 605 days waiting period. So everything is not hunky-dory, is it, Dr. Clemmons?
We are running efficiently under our budget.
Yeah, I've heard you say that word, excuse me, Chairman. I've heard that word 4 times, 5 times, 50 times from you. The numbers are the numbers. And you got to deal with those numbers. I have to deal with those numbers. It's not acceptable to me. So it apparently is acceptable to you because you're running at the most efficient rate you possibly can. Dr. Clemmons, can you guarantee there will be no cuts to Social Security benefits in the next budget, administration's budget? Can you guarantee that?
Congressman, I cannot make guarantees.
Dr. Clemmons, would the Social Security Agency be able to reduce processing times for veterans if the agency had additional resources? Dr. Clemmons.
If we had $100 million in additional resources, we would, be able to process additional 106,000 additional claims. With our budget, the president's budget, we are concentrating our priorities on efficiencies. We are looking at using our technology through IT modernization. So we are on a path to implement.
Would the Social Security Agency be able to reduce processing times for veterans if the agency had additional staff?
As noted, if we had additional, if we had additional funding, 100 million, we would be able to process additional claims. That would include additional staff in that estimate.
So if additional funding, and you pointed to a particular figure, helps you get more folks, you think you'll increase. So it strikes me as if we support that budget, increase it more, we get more responses and shorten the time even further. Am I using proper or improper logic?
Congressman, we will operate within the budget we are given. If we are giving additional funds, we would be able to fund 106,000 additional.
And I'm sure if you're given
51,000.
nothing, you'd operate within that too.
We
Dr. Clemmons, I have one final question. Thank you for your courtesies, Mr. Chairman. Would removing the federal hiring freeze? Yeah, I know. All right, go ahead, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to ask one more question.
We'll go ahead and ask it.
Thank you, sir. Would removing the federal hiring freeze for the Social Security Administration improve service to veterans and those receiving Social Security benefits?
With the hiring freeze, we are continuing to serve our veterans now. They are getting expedited claims and expedited process. We're putting them at the forefront, and our service would remain strong for veterans, regardless of our funding.
Regardless of the funding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Mr. Schweikert, you're recognized for 10 minutes.
Oh, we're all in trouble now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, look, actually, this is one of those, maybe there's going to be a tonal quality, but I think there is, a commonality of all the members on the panel just wanting to know we're doing the right thing. So let me start with a couple things that I was seeing in your written testimony, actually talking about electronic records and the fact that veterans that are applying for disability come to you with actually an electronic record, and the fact that they move through the system somewhat more efficiently because of that. First, could you help me understand that efficiency of those electronic records and what that means to the population you're helping?
Yes, Congressman, thank you for the question. With the electronic records, that's actually a data exchange. It's an agreement that we have using health information technology directly with the VA and DOD. So a veteran's not involved, they give us their permission, and we
I'm going
can,
to jump on you just because, and it's not only data sharing with VA, DOD, but even some private sources?
yes, indeed.
Okay.
So we are trying to we're trying to optimize the use of health information technology in general for all individuals, including veterans. So when we receive that information, quite simply what happens is, right now we have a process that relies on scanning, faxing, a number of ways to get the information. Using Health IT, within seconds, we are able to ping out to the other component, the VA, DOD, to see if they have information. If they do, we get the notice. We then send back our permission to receive the information. They send back that information to us, and it comes in a standard format with information that helps the adjudicators to make a decision. For example, it will flag, asked earlier, about conditions that might be our most severe conditions.
I geek out with you just a second. So in the sort of data sharing agreements you have, it's coming to you in a standard. So is it auto-filling your forms because you have data field conformity?
Yes, I'm probably past the technology, but yes, it comes in. I can tell you we've created one standard format. The information comes in that format with a summary up front of what the record contains, which is very helpful for veterans claims particularly, which could be quite extensive.
Because I was seeing something in here, and correct me if I have my math or what I'm reading wrong. It becomes the difference of when you're working with a veteran and they have the electronic records, they will get processed in like 47 days compared to 89 days. Help me understand what that meant.
So I think you're speaking to the fact that if we can make a decision on the veteran's claim with just the health information that we get through Health IT. So for example, they have a severe condition, we get all of their medical evidence, it shows that they have a medical condition, we can make that decision in 45% faster. Now it's a lesser amount if it's we have to get supplemental information. However, it still expedites the process through.
You've had these data sharing agreements since 2016 is when it was up and running? Or?
So with the VA, we started our agreement in 2016 and November of 2015 with DOD.
Okay, so that is actually one of your areas of that you would say.
Absolutely, I would say efficiency is electronic record.
So in our minute and a half left, tell me, let's do a speed round. What do you see working, and where do you see frustrations? Let's start with good stuff. What's working?
We have updated our disability policies, bringing our medical listings 93% up to date. We're working on our vocational policies. We've also implemented process policy to make sure that we are making timely, accurate decisions. We're advancing our IT modernization, not just through health information exchange, but across the board to consolidate systems. We're building case processing systems.
Okay, on the things that are frustrating you. And
we operate in a dynamic environment, and we have to continue to keep pace through our policies and change to do that, and that takes time. So it's being nimble to make sure that we're making those changes.
okay. And I always wish we had more time, but now that I have 10 minutes, I was hoping somewhere here, or some member will ask, because there were some interesting numbers on applicants, veterans, that we're actually also getting vocational opportunities. We're actually still finding some employment opportunities, even with their personal impairments. And I was just curious what enlightenment you can give us on that. So somewhere here, if you ever get a chance to throw that in. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Ms. Sanchez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think all of us here today can agree on one thing, and that is we must do more to ensure that our veterans are able to retire from their service with some degree of dignity and security for their future. Social Security is the bedrock of the American retirement system, and the promise that Social Security has made is that after a lifetime of hard work, if people contribute, that seniors can retire with dignity and security. Like the general population, Social Security is there for veterans when they retire or when they experience a debilitating injury or illness that prevents them from working. And I was surprised to find that nearly 20% of adult Social Security beneficiaries are in fact veterans. And I know that the Social Security Administration has taken important steps to better serve veterans, to try to expedite the processing of their claim. For example, disabled veterans' claims are moved to the front of the line, and Social Security, I know, works with the VA and DOD to further expedite claims. And it's laudable that they've taken those necessary steps to try to improve expediency in processing veterans' claim. But I can't help but feel that Social Security's dwindling operation budget makes it harder and harder to provide excellent service to all beneficiaries. Budget cuts have weakened Social Security's ability to fully serve veterans and other recipients as well. And despite the growing number of beneficiaries, Social Security's operating budget has actually declined by about 11% since 2010. And when you have that kind of decline, service is naturally going to suffer. Call centers, we get reports, call centers can't keep up with the incoming calls. Half of callers hang up before they even speak with a service representative. Some experience delays in their benefits or overpayments. So without properly funding Social Security, they can't provide the quality and timely service that they should be. And when we don't do that, we are, in fact, not serving all of our beneficiaries. Ms. Clemmons, I thank you for coming today to testify. I see that you're a veteran and that you've worked in various federal agencies over the years. So I, first of all, would like to commend you and thank you for your service to our country. And my first question is about the accuracy of claims, because it's not just about getting claims processed quickly, it's also about getting them processed accurately. Can you tell me how frequently does SSA update the listing of impairments and training materials for assessing impairments that are unique to veterans?
Congresswoman Sanchez, thank you. We agree that accuracy needs to stay forefront and that we need to concentrate on quality, and that means staying current. So we've had a focused area on updating our medical listings of impairment. We are now 93% complete with our comprehensive updates. The last one that's remaining is impairments, musculoskeletal impairments. That's now out for an interagency review, and we're looking forward to public comments on that shortly. Once we update that, we will be 100% up to date on our listings, and we are working on listings for other impairments that are targeted. Once we get those 3 listings targeted done, we will be on a 3 to 5 year update cycle for our listings. Of particular interest is just 2 years ago, we updated neurological listings, and that covers TBI. TBI used to, we've always evaluated individuals with all impairments, TBI, PTSD. But we made it clear in the neurological listing what TBI was and how to evaluate it, giving the benefits to the veteran. We also last year updated our mental listings, and in it specifically named PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, gave guidance to our adjudicators. Outside the listings, we're providing training and updates.
But how often is that typically done, or what is the recommendation in terms of how often that should be done? That's sort of what I was trying to get at.
So our goal is to keep our listings on a 3 to 5 year update cycle where we will go in as medical changes and do targeted revisions. However, as something changes, and we are constantly meeting with medical experts, federal partners, to get medical information. As medical advances, we can always go in and do a targeted revision. It's not just in the listings. For example, we're doing continuing medical education on TBI right now because of new information, and we're providing that to our medical consultants so they're aware of the advancements.
Very quickly, the improved information sharing seems to be achieving the goal of making determinations quicker. Are there any areas in which that process could be improved?
For information sharing and data exchanges and things like that. Well, what we are doing for information exchanging is we work with our federal partners. We have a community of practice where we host with other federal partners, talk about best practices, see if there's areas for learning from each other. We have a quarterly meeting with the VA. For example, during that quarterly meeting on data and policy, we identified opportunities to provide the VA with additional information on date of death and changed our process. So we're constantly looking for opportunities to increase those data sharings and have the relationships in place to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Clemmons, for being here. I appreciate your time before our committee. I also appreciate hearing the work that you all are doing in prioritizing veterans. They've served for our country, and if their federal government can make their process of navigating through the federal government easier and swifter, I applaud you for that, and I think that your numbers are proven to that. Also, I do want to point out, my colleague was asking you all kinds of budget questions earlier. I think that members of Congress needs to remember that the president doesn't pass a budget. Congress passes the budget. In my 5 years here, I've not seen Congress ever accept a president's budget, whether they're Republican or Democrat straight on. So you being forced to defend or ask on a budget, I find to be unacceptable. And I think you handled yourself very well, and I appreciate you being here. But we need to remember that just voting no every time a budget's on the floor doesn't give you more money to serve the people that we complain about. Actually voting yes on a budget and appropriating money gives more resources instead of just creating Trump tantrums in committee. So I apologize for that, but I want to thank you for handling that quite well. In the Missouri 8th Congressional District, we have roughly 186,000 individuals on Social Security, and 40,000 of those beneficiaries are disabled workers. We don't have the numbers that I could find that would show how many of those were veterans. I think that would be very helpful if somehow the Social Security Administration could help different members to see how many veterans are within their different congressional districts. That'd be helpful. The wait times, though, in Missouri, I have to bring up. I still feel like that they are a significant issue for all people in general. If you look at the St. Louis Social Security office, the wait time is 672 days. And that's 73 days worse than the national average. So the folks in Missouri are not being served as well as what they could be. And I'd recommend, if we do have more discretionary spending, that maybe a more investment in the Midwest and Missouri to help bring that down with employees would be great. It's definitely a cheaper cost of living than on the East and West Coast if we actually had more of these processing facilities in the Midwest. I do want to point out that I want to applaud you again with your numbers from 2017 in hiring veterans. That's phenomenal. I think you, almost a third of your employees that you're hired are veterans. So your agency puts your boots to the pavement, and you follow through on security and making sure that veterans are taken care of through the process and also in employees. So I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for dealing with members of Congress. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Our veterans deserve the best service from our government, including Social Security. And as we've heard today, Social Security has several ways to speed up disability decisions for our veterans, from electronic health records to ensuring Social Security processes veterans' claims quickly. Social Security is helping veterans. Social Security is doing a great job hiring our veterans, but there's always more that can be done. And I encourage Social Security to continue to find ways to help our veterans. And I hope that you will do that. And I want to thank our witness for your testimony, and thank you also to our members for being here. With that, the committee, just a moment, do you care to make a comment?
Yes, I do.
You're
And
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing. And I want to thank our witness, Ms. Clemmons, for coming as well. And I would only add that I hope that we're able to have another hearing on this, and where we're able to get to some of the questions, I think very straightforward questions that Mr. Schreikert, Mr. Rice, Mr. Pasquale, yourself, Mr. Chairman, answered. I do understand, Ms. Clemmons, that you are soldiering very well on behalf of the administration responsibility. I would also add that I think that Mr. Trump, especially someone who stood alone on a stage and indicated under the most severe kind of pressure that Social Security needed to be preserved and expanded, would be deeply concerned about the lag in time, the inefficiencies in the system. And hopefully, if we can hear from other advocates about how we can fix those, how we can speed those up, how this process can be better. Unfortunately, we didn't hear that today, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today. We appreciate your testimony, and with that, the subcommittee stands adjourned.